in their veins. Mackie and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
I'm looking forward to it, man. It's been really, really great. The energy, the vibe, the culture, the camaraderie is starting to come together. And, with us bringing pretty much everybody back from, the 2021 season, everybody's just looking forward to some great outcome because we know we have all the pieces. Now we just got to go out there, execute when those plays come about. 2 minute. I just saw this crazy stat, by the way. They said last year, if we wouldn't have gave up a touchdown before halftime, we would have been 15-2. How crazy is that?
Hey.
Patrick Peterson on the all. It's a good stat right there here on Reckless Speculation Thursday. Bring our friend in here from the 5 Eyewitness News sports team, the Scoop podcast, Darren Doogie Wolfson. Although I'm afraid, gentlemen, it's not as easy as saying, well, if we just went from being this historically bad 2-minute defense to giving up almost nothing in those situations, we would have won 15 games. Just clean it up. Be super easy.
It is very convenient. By the way, happy Reckless Speculation Thursday. Always my favorite day of the week. Was Patrick Peterson wearing a Charlotte Bobcats jersey? I know that doesn't translate to those who listen to just the audio portion of our conversation, but for those who watch us on YouTube, that was the old Charlotte Bobcats colors, but it looked like it said NBA across the front, not Charlotte or not Bobcats. But that was an interesting jersey that Peterson was wearing. But yeah, Phil, that's who they were. They weren't capable of making stops last year in the final 4 minutes of halves, the final 2 minutes. Yes, we're well aware that historically speaking, going back multiple, decades, that this was the worst defense in the final 4 minutes of a half, the final 2 minutes of a half. But that's who they were, right? They couldn't do anything about it. They knew it. They knew it mid-season. They couldn't fix it. That's why we're talking about, somebody new in charge of running the defense. That's why, Phil, Judd and I went back and forth on Tuesday. He asked me about some of the things I'm fascinated to see with the first practice now, 6 days away. The pads come on Monday, August 1st. I'm most curious to see at Donatel the defense. I still think the offense is going to be good. I'm curious to see if this defense is capable of getting the stops that they need for this team to win double-digit games, for them to get back to the playoffs. Heck, for them to get over 500 for the first time since 2019.
Yeah.
I think the most interesting thing there, though, is this. The problem with rankings and statistics is they don't take into account situational things. And so offensively, we could go back and say, man, if the Vikings had just had some more stops, they would have won 15 games, which is asinine because the reality is this. If they had been able to function beyond the scripted plays consistently, they would have blown teams out. You wouldn't have had to worry. You would have had an offense that would have been top 5, if not 3. If you take the scripted plays, I'll always go back to, because it's the poster child game for 2021, the Cleveland game, okay? You came out and rolled. You cruised down the field. You looked like you were going to kick Cleveland's ass. You got through the scripted plays, and we're like, I guess there's not much more here. I mean, the second guy that statistically we could talk about, and it's not Cousins, is Jefferson. If you just look at Jefferson's first 2 years, the stats are off the charts. He's a record-setting young wide receiver. If you watch the games, though, you see why there's the capability for Justin Jefferson this season to be used much more, much smarter. So, that's the problem with statistics and ifs and buts, because this offense, if you could have even harnessed the scripted plays for 4 more series, you would have blown some teams out. It wouldn't have been close, and your defensive shortcomings might have been a problem, but not nearly as big a problem as they ended up being.
Well, that's fair. I mean, Phil, you probably know this. Where did the Vikings rank last year? 3 and outs.
Offensively, they had the most 3 and outs of any team in the league.
Okay, so I mean that
tied with Houston.
Speaks to what Judd is laying out. So that's fair, plenty fair. I'm still most fascinated though to watch the defense. I really am.
Sure.
Ed Donatel, Zadarius Smith, Danielle Hunter. What can Ed do? That to me is the key to this, right? Even with the offensive shortcomings last year, I think with O'Connell, with Phillips coming in, I think the offense is going to be pretty darn good. I don't know yet how good this defense will be.
Yeah. So the Vikings, because they said goodbye to Nate Stanley, they have an open roster spot, and there was some speculation that maybe Kyle Rudolph would be brought back as, I would assume, more of a backup or red zone tight end to Irv Smith, but then he goes and signs with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to go play with Tom Brady. So the Vikings, and you can maybe provide some insight into how close or not the Vikings were to bringing Rudolph back, but they do have an open roster spot kind of on the eve of training camp, which is interesting, Dukes.
It is interesting. Now, they have not made an offer to Ndamukong Suh as of yesterday, but that is still a name to keep an eye on, or maybe they add some other interior defensive linemen. I feel bad for Nate Stanley. I saw him at Woodbury High School a couple Tuesdays ago. Like, he was pumped. My colleague Alec ended up talking to him. He was pumped about another training camp with the Vikings. Now he doesn't get that opportunity. So, yeah, it is interesting. What are the Vikings going to do with that open roster spot? Because typically you don't make a move until you have to make a move. Like, why make the move on Nate now when you didn't necessarily have to? So what do they have up their sleeve on Kyle Rudolph? So I predicted with Judd on Tuesday. We spoke at like 9 a.m. I said, if I had to bet, Rudolph will end up with the Buccaneers. That's because at that moment, like, to use the football analogy, like, the deal was at the 1.5 yard line. Like, it was just about done. I was led to believe it was just about done on Saturday, in fact. Now, somebody else told me Tom Brady was blowing up Kyle's phone the last 24 hours, that maybe even Tampa came in with a little bit more money.
Well, just for fun, was Kirk blowing up Kyle's phone too? Were they both?
I don't sense that Kirk was blowing up Kyle's phone. And on that, like, I really do believe Kyle had genuine interest in rejoining the Vikings. Heck, wife is here. Kids are here. He has the house here. There was legit interest in rejoining the Vikings. But Kyle also wants to win a ring. Like, how do you turn down Tom Brady? But I think the Vikings chatter was driven by the Kyle side. Like, I don't think the Vikings were hanging up the phone. So were there conversations? But I truly believe that it was the Kyle camp that initiated those conversations. Bottom line, now that it's done and over with, Kyle is on his way to the Buccaneers. I just don't sense anything ever came all that close to him signing with the Vikings.
Judd, we still need a 30 for 30 documentary on the 2,000-word manifesto, the goodbye that Kyle Rudolph wrote in the Players Tribune that included like 50 different teammates
Matt
and staffers,
Castle.
Matt Castle, Teddy Bridgewater, no mention
Ragnar.
of Kirk. Ragnar.
Ragnar.
The backup equipment guys, you know.
The thing about this is I didn't agree with the Vikings' decision to hang on to as the amount of veterans that they did after Kwesi and then O'Connell subsequently got the job. But my God, if you start to bring guys back, shut it down. Like, you need to go in. This is a different direction. And the thing that, so why, Dukes, why I think you're right, and why I think it was driven by Kyle's camp, probably just to say, well, look, the Vikings did call, is because of this.
Although I'm telling you, Joe, I don't think they called.
Well, no, but
I'll do
he's
some
gonna,
more digging on that, but
it's
don't
okay.
think
It's
they
okay.
initiated the conversation.
But here's the bottom line too. Tight ends in what they're about to do are going to play a very specific role. And so, like, if Irv Smith doesn't work out, like he gets hurt again or he's out, you're not going to then go get a guy that can necessarily catch passes, because you'll replace what you envisioned Irv Smith with another receiver. So, like, I don't think that this is the old, oh my God, we don't have our Antonio Gates or our Kelsey tight end. I think this is if Irv Smith can't play, we'll just transition to throw an extra receiver onto the field like the Rams did. So this whole thing of like, we got to bring back a guy like Kyle is, I think, folly. So I think you're exactly right.
Well, on Irv Smith Jr., he was over at the Twin Cities Pro-Am the other day, the basketball gathering over at Minnehaha Academy. Somebody there told me, for whatever it's worth, it's not like he was playing, right? He was just there, but
sure,
that he looked good. He sounded good. But yeah, when you look at the tight ends on the Vikings roster, it's a bunch of blockers outside of Irv, right? Zach Davidson, Ben Ellefson, the guy they just drafted from South Carolina, Johnny Munt. Like, those guys are more blockers than pass catchers.
Right.
And because now, 2 days later, Judd, from our conversation on Tuesday, that I've gathered that the Vikings didn't come all that close to signing Kyle Rudolph. Now, there are still some free agent tight ends out there, Jared Cook. There's some other guys that are capable or somewhat capable, but I think it's what you're saying that if Irv can't function, goes down, whatever the case may be, you just replace him with a wide receiver. In fact, I would not be shocked if the initial 53-man roster contains 7 wide receivers.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah. Well, we've been talking about this. Of course, he's my guy. Is it Hennigan? Is it Appalachian State receiver guy? The only guy on the roster, basically. He's an undrafted free agent that has returned punts in his college career. So could a 6th or 7th receiver just be a punt returner, for instance, and then?
Well, I mean, is Jalen Naylor? Maybe
Yeah.
the front runner for Mr. Mankato, 6th round pick from Michigan State. Is he capable? I mean, he's returned before. Now, I'll trust your knowledge on that. I had a conversation with Jalen shortly after the draft, but I don't recall what the number said. So I'll trust you, Phil, that he did more kick returning in East Lansing, not punt returning. But I wonder if that's a skill set that can translate on a guy like Jalen Naylor. I mean, right now, even though he was a late round draft pick, I see Jalen Naylor on the 53-man roster.
Yeah.
What do we know, Dukes, about the status of second-round cornerback Andrew Booth, who obviously did not basically take part in the spring camps? Do we think he's going to be set to go on day one of training camp? Because I think if he is, he at least can get himself into the mix to certainly compete for some playing time.
Yes, although my money would be on Cam Dantzler starting week 1 against the Packers, not Andrew Booth Jr.
I would put Doogie's money on that, too.
Tried to dig on his status. Now, I will tell you, in a conversation during minicamp, he alluded to the idea that come late July, he'll be good to go. But, Judd, I unfortunately don't have a very specific update on. Yes, we will see him on the field next Wednesday. So, to be determined. Hopefully, I have that update for you maybe Tuesday morning next time we chat. I'd also like to believe, because I feel confident Ed Ingram's deal will get done, that Andrew Booth Jr.'s deal will also get done. But we've seen a transition the last couple of years with these second-round picks, especially the higher second-round picks, getting 3 years fully guaranteed, then even some money guaranteed in that final year, that 4th year. So presumably that is the hiccup right now. What are the Vikings willing to guarantee to Andrew Booth Jr.? But certainly led to believe Ed Ingram, there's nothing to worry about on that front. I fully expect him to be on the field next Wednesday.
Are there any other either surprise or otherwise under the radar injury concerns? I feel like every year you get to camp, it's like, oh, these two guys are progressing slower than usual. But Danielle Hunter, Zadarius Smith, we talked about Booth. But are there any other little injury things to keep an eye on here in the next week or two?
Well, Amir Smith-Marset had the boot on during minicamp, but he got the boot off before June was over. So he's been out of the boot now for at least 3.5 weeks. So my understanding is he is good to go. I mean, I was with Alexander Madison a week or two ago. He looks solid. Adam Thielen looks solid. So no, I've not heard of any other, deep concerns. I mean, to me, the number one thing I'll be keeping an eye on injury-wise is where is Irv Smith Jr.'s knee?
Yeah.
Is he ready to do everything that he needs to be able to do?
Something else, too, it's the narrative and the reality is just how bad this defense was last year. But the first 7 weeks of the season when Danielle Hunter was on the field, nobody was talking about how bad this defense was. I don't think it was 2017 Mike Zimmer defense, but they were number one in pressures from a pass rush standpoint. So, if Danielle Hunter is healthy and playing, and Zadarius Smith should be a nice addition too, but we're probably going to give a lot of credit to Zimmer being gone, Donatell's system overhauling things. But the reality is, if Danielle Hunter plays, I don't care if you're running a 3-4, a 4-3, if you're running the Bears defense from the 80s, your defense is going to be better if Danielle Hunter is playing 15, 16, 17 games, Dukes.
Absolutely. I would put him among the top 5 pass rushers in the game.
Yeah.
Is anybody going to debate that? I think he's that good. I think it's one of the better contracts, even coming off the injury issues the last couple years. I still think it's a team-friendly contract. I'm still shocked, going back many years, that he actually signed that contract. So, yes, I don't care if it's a 4-3-3-4. Yeah, I mean, that defense, you're right, Phil. I mean, when he went out, it took a turn for the worse. Now, Zadarius Smith, Judd, we talked about this when he initially signed. Yep. Well, committed to Baltimore, right? Then we were wondering what the heck took place with those negotiations. Ultimately ends up here. Like, at his age, with the back, like, there's cause for concern there. He's okay now.
Right.
He may very well be okay September 19th in Philadelphia, go up and down the list of games there September into October. But how will Zadarius Smith become middle of the season as we get into the dog days of the season, November, then when the games ramp up again in terms of, intensity, although, 17, they're all going to be pretty intense. But you get my point as you're making that push for the playoffs in December, how will Zadarius be then? That to me is going to be a big question too.
I do think a big difference potentially that we're going to see starting Wednesday when they take the field, and then to Duke's point, when they get into full pads on August 1st, is this. Camp KOC is going to be, I think, in stark contrast to Camp Zim, in the sense that, like, when guys didn't take part before, it was, oh my gosh, they're not taking part. Because, Mike liked to keep an intensity, I think, that was a little bit more, and this is fine, a bit more old school probably. O'Connell, I think, is going to really be Baldelli-esque in trying to emphasize rest and keeping guys fresh, which, by the way, in this league, not a bad idea. But my point is, I don't think it's going to quite come across as the crisis point that it did when guys didn't practice with Mike, because Mike clearly still became annoyed by that. I think O'Connell is going to err on the side of resting guys more and absolutely never be upset about it.
Oh, so, yeah. I mean, and, the 3 preseason games, it's 3 still. Like, I don't expect to see guys playing in those games. The main guys, like, yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I think it's going to be a pretty lax training camp. Now, I'll still be interested to see those one-on-one battles. We will see when they are in pads, offensive linemen, defensive linemen, one-on-one battles. Like, it's going to get somewhat physical, so I'll be keying in on those. But yes, for the most part, we're not going to see the Oklahoma drill or anything crazy like that.
That'd be great if he just broke it out.
Let's do it. The Oklahoma drill, one of my favorite footballisms. Before we continue on here with Reckless Speculation Thursday, boys, old Macadac had to have a little sit-down with Maya Mackey yesterday. So, she loves her Nutrisource chicken and rice food, and we're trying to get Stella Zolgad. Look at this right here for the YouTube audience, Doogie. This is Maya Mackey, and this is her reaction when she knows that old Macadac has a big old scoop of Nutrisource chicken and rice food ready to throw in her bowl. Well, after she had her breakfast yesterday, she decided when Mom wasn't looking to partake in a little Raisin Bran as well, and so we had to take her in to make sure that she was okay, because I don't think dogs are supposed to eat raisins. So the message for Maya here is, you'll stay consistent digestively and gut-wise and poo-wise if you just stick to the Nutrisource chicken and rice food. No more human food, no more Raisin Bran. Just stick to the Nutrisource and you'll be good, Maya.
Stella is anxious. She's anxious to try it now because she said, you know what? I'm getting older. Like, I mean, let's be honest. The Zolgad household ain't young. From Stella to Dawn to Judd, we ain't young.
The geriatric.
And so yes, exactly right. And there's nothing more important at this age, as Stella can tell you, than diet. So yes, Phil has introduced me to the world of Nutrisource, and Stella excited to try that.
It's a third-generation family-owned and operated company out of Perham, Minnesota. And so NutrisourcePetFoods.com is where you can find retailers near you. And Nutrisource is the official dog food of all of the Mackie and Judd pups here. So highly recommended. Maybe Vinny and Scooby. Maybe we can get some other dogs hooked in here.
Absolutely.
So there's Nutrisource.
Too loud, otherwise he's going to come up here and start barking.
NutrisourcePetFoods.com. Also, a quick shout out to our friends at Federated Mutual Insurance Company. So in a few days here, the Federated Challenge takes place again, which is all about raising money for Big Brothers Big Sisters. Since 2005, $44 million raised, and this money goes to help benefit Big Brothers Big Sisters and the formation of mentoring relationships with children facing adversity to help them get into better schools, have brighter futures. If you want to find out how you can make a difference or maybe be a big yourself, go to federatedchallenge.org. Okay, one more Vikings thing for me anyways. So on Purple Daily today, we're going to do a deep dive into just Kellen Mond and the first 15 months of Kellen Mond and going into his second training camp. And one of my biggest questions, Doogie, is he's been on the team now for 15 months. You know, he had the 3 plays against Green Bay, and then Zimmer threw him under the bus, and that was kind of the most we've heard about Kellen Mond in 15 months. Otherwise, I feel like there's been very little reported or said, or he's just kind of been in witness protection for the better part of 15 months. Have you heard anything at all whatsoever about Kellen Mond recently?
Well, not necessarily recently, but I know this much. If you can't beat out Sean Mannion, like, there are serious issues, right? So, like, to me, you know, now Kirk Cousins is Iron Man, right? Like, he doesn't get hurt. Maybe I just jinxed him, but like, he doesn't miss games. That is one good quality about Kirk. But like, I think Kellen is going to be the number 2 quarterback. Like, if I had to bet, you know, right now I'd say Kellen Mond is on this roster, the number 2 guy. Sean Mannion is gone. But no, not necessarily. Now, if you want me to, I'll reach out to his former trainer, Hugh Jackson. You know, one of Zim's guys, the former Browns head coach who trained him pre-draft. You know, he still keeps in good contact with him. You know, so I can dig a little bit if you want me to. But no, you're right. We haven't heard much. I haven't seen now. You know, not that I'm super active on TikTok or Instagram or anything like that, but I haven't seen any social media posts about, you know, his off-season training or anything like that. So he's another guy. Yeah, I mean, come Wednesday, you know, some eyes will be on him. But I'm just telling you, like, if you can't beat out Sean Mannion, we do have serious issues.